There it is. So moving on to the next piece. Now that we have finished our housekeeping items, I would like to hand it over to Karen Mcdonald, the chair of our Community Leadership Council and the executive director of SAGE Seniors Association, to introduce herself and to briefly walk us through the Healthy Aging Alberta initiative and the Core Alberta platform for those who might not be familiar. Karen, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Virtually, I'm joining you from Edmonton, so Treaty 6 territory. I'm very pleased to be here today representing the Community Leadership Council for the Healthy Aging Initiative. So excited to learn more about Mensheds. It's an initiative, a movement, let's say, internationally that SAGE has been involved in for quite some time that I'm really passionate about, and our team has been supporting for a while, but I always really enjoy learning more about. It's such an important thing in our community, so I'm really pleased to be able to be here with you all today. So I'm going to share a little bit of information with you about Healthy Aging Alberta. Healthy Aging Alberta is a provincial initiative by community for a community that brings together a rich network of community-based organizations from across the province that are united by the vision of making Alberta one of the best places in the world to grow older. Healthy Aging Alberta focuses on the development of a coordinated, community-based senior serving sector that is respected and integrated within the broader senior serving system of care and can empower and inspire every senior to age how they choose, ultimately improving the health and social outcomes for older adults. There are thousands of incredible organizations in our sector in Alberta, each offering critical services that support healthy and empowering aging. But we can be stronger together and have a louder voice when we are united. Together, we can create the bedrock for healthy aging in our province by building a network that connects the sector's organizations together. Healthy Aging Alberta seeks to develop a coordinated sector by bringing together community-based organizations around a common framework for action, with a focus on identifying and addressing priority areas related to healthy aging in community. The initiative seeks to create a provincial network of organizations that can advocate for healthy aging on a provincial level, share knowledge, and create functional relationships with one another and with our allies in health and other sectors. Like a tapestry, we become stronger when we weave our knowledge, expertise, and passion together. United, we can create more communities where older Albertans are supported as they grow older, in their homes, engaged in their communities, a future we all want and benefit from, and one where the tools at our disposal to support the weaving of this network is Core Alberta. Oh, sorry, now my notes aren't moving. There we go. Core Alberta is a sector development tool that has been developed to support the collective vision and strategic objectives of Healthy Aging Alberta. The Core Alberta platform is a free, member-based digital knowledge and learning hub designed to support provincial sector coordination and strengthening by connecting community-based senior serving organizations to each other and their allied partners. Core Alberta provides a digital space to share knowledge and capacity building opportunities, allowing members to collaborate with others with aligned mandates. This event today is an example of creating learning opportunities that bring organizations together from across the province. We have over 1,000 members and are growing with each and every day, with more and more individuals like yourselves contributing to this knowledge hub. And we want to thank you for being with us today. So to highlight how we spend our time together, we've prepared an agenda for your viewing on the screen. So you can have a bit of a peek there. You'll notice there's a break because we've got a pretty packed agenda today. So we promise we'll give you a break. And with that being said, I now want to hand it over to Punch Jackson to introduce himself and to take it away. Punch.
Good morning. Good morning. I've got to get my screen shared here. Are we okay, Cindy?
Yeah, it looks beautiful. Thanks, Punch.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Cindy and Mei Li for the hours and hours of work that they've put into getting us here today, and for being so supportive and imposing discipline on some of us who need that discipline. And thank you, Karen, for that introduction. And good morning to everyone. And it is a good morning. I was out on my deck a little bit earlier and listening for the first time this spring to the robins in the trees. So that was it was a great sign. The presentation that we're going to give to you today is a story that is using Karen's analogy. It's a tapestry. It's weaving a whole bunch of threads together. And in order to tell that story, we have a number of presenters with us today. And I'll highlight them in a second. But the story for Mensheds is a worldwide story. It's become a movement. It started in Australia, and there it has spread to New Zealand and Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, Denmark. There's sheds in Kenya and even 4 sheds in Iceland. And it's in the last few years, it's arrived in Canada and the United States. So the storytellers for today, myself, Wayne Warner from Cold Lake, Brian Christensen from downtown Edmonton, Merv Graham, who's going to be talking about the activities in Calgary, Amanda, who's going to, from Sage, who's going to talk about some of the perspectives of women in sheds and around sheds, and Michael from the city of Edmonton, who's going to talk about the benefits, the research, and then we'll all get into talking about the future aspects. So the first thing that you're going to want to know is well, what is a shed? You know, it's and the simplest way to describe it is that it's a safe space for men to get together and connect with other men. And the what is it like? What does it look like? It could be a church basement. It could be a group of guys in a neighborhood get together and they gather in one guy's garage and do whatever. They may only sit around the garage and have the coffee pot perking and drink coffee and talk about stuff that men want to talk about. It may be in a senior's residence. It may be in a historic building. It might be, unfortunately, it might be in an old restaurant that didn't make it through COVID. It could be almost any building in your community that's available. The whole idea is that men need a Menshed to associate with each other. And so you are going to say, well, why? Why do men go to a Menshed? What's the deal there? The simplest way, keeping it simple, is that it might just be that a group of guys, individuals, have time on their hands. And the second line there on the screen, 18 to 101, it doesn't fit with what I'm talking about, but I wanted you to know the age, the range for Mensheds, because there is a shedder in the UK who is 101. Men that have lost their social network after they retire, and that's something that people, men and women, don't think about very often in terms of the group of who their friends are. And when they retire and they suddenly are hit with the fact that their whole network of friends was at work and it's gone, and it takes a real toll on them. There are people who have had the grand plan for retirement. They've got the job jars all around the house. Their wife has got those job jars. It's men, and suddenly they become bored with the job jars, or they've done them all, They've completed all those tasks. An influencing factor is that wives and women become tired of having the guys hanging around the house underfoot. There could be fellows in Alberta that are new to town. They may be working in the oil industry and they move around and they need to find some guys to associate with that are not just focused in being in the pub. People that are suffering in silence. There's all kinds of issues that are bothering them and they need to have other guys to share things with. There are people who have they've downsized. The kids are all gone and they have had to downsize, and they used to have a fabulous workshop and it's gone. And they need some place to go to tinker and putter. And then there's the group of men who've lost their wives and their partners, and they're lonely. And as we've discovered, many of those guys don't have a clue in terms of cooking. They were taken care of by their moms, they were taken care of by their sisters, their wives for years, and somewhere along the line, they didn't learn how to cook. And so they are looking for some camaraderie. Of late, doctors are starting, and social workers, psychologists are starting to prescribe attending a Menshed to men who are suffering from depression. Then there's that group that are just plain lonely, and they have suffering in depression and have no reason to get up in the morning. And that's sort of an overview of why men join sheds. The the range of things that men do. What do they do in sheds? It could be anything, and it isn't just focused around woodworking. Sheds, I would say the majority of sheds around the world have that in common. They have a group of people who are focused on woodworking. But it could be carving. It could be a shed that is just focused, guys that want to play cribbage. They got a coffee pot in the corner and they got the crib boards, and that's their focus. But it's what happens around the crib board. It's what happens around a puzzle board, the conversations that take place, where guys start to talk about what's bothering them. I got this thing that's, it's not working right anymore. What's wrong? Then there's conversations about that. The guys could be a group that is mentoring other younger men. It could be guys, they're mentoring high school students. They could be like the downtown shed and working through Sage. They could be pen pals with an elementary school. They could be guests at an elementary school to talk about back in the day, before TV. Before cell phones? Kids getting perspective. There are some sheds that have a small focus on early guys with early dementia. They could be working on refinishing furniture. They could be making personal protective devices. And that was one of the things that the shed in Arnprior, Ontario, as soon as COVID hit, they started to develop shields for people in their community. It could be rebuilding computers. It could be just about anything. Picnic tables that are donated, raised garden beds that are donated in the community. Every shed, besides their activities for themselves, is they have a focus on the community and doing things and giving things back to the community. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think it's it's an interesting, a good segue to Wayne to talk about his shed. There you go, Wayne.
Thanks, Punch. And thanks for the picture of our comfort birds, which we produced prior to Christmas. And we produced 80 of these and turned them over to the long-term care as well as the seniors manor. We've had feedback on them and people find them quite comforting. It's something to do with their hands when they're sitting around rather than just sitting with their hands and staring off into space. Anyway, to introduce myself, I'm Wayne Warner from Cold Lake. For those of you unfamiliar with Cold Lake is a community of just over 15,600 people. It's home to Four Wing, the largest fighter base in Canada, and is also located in the middle of the in-situ area of heavy oil recovery in central Alberta. As a result of these situations, it is home to a young population with a median age of 31, but at the same time, a retirement home of choice to many ex-military, with just over 1,020 people over the age of 64 making up our population. The Cold Lake Menshed was initiated after I came across an article about Mensheds in Australia in 2019, and 4 of us met in Tim Hortons. After several phone discussions with Doug Mackey, we decided to go for it. And at the same time, a different group of us were in the process of establishing an age-friendly Cold Lake Society to create a community that was friendly to all age groups with an emphasis on the elder part of the population. As it was an apparent fit, we put the Cold Lake Menshed under the society umbrella. The society is now a registered charity, and as such provides us with an organization to use for insurance, administration, advertising, community connection, and to attract donations as well as access grants. We have a very close relationship between us and work together, often working on similar projects within the community. The shed initially decided to open Tuesday and Thursday nights, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., which was successful. We then added Wednesday afternoons, 1 to 4, in order to accommodate men from their seniors lodge. With the advent of the pandemic, we had to cut back to Tuesday and Thursdays and ran in the afternoons, 1 to 4:30. As we reopened, we were going to reinstate the Wednesday time for the seniors lodge and possibly add an evening as well. Having been a retiree for the last 10 years myself, the Menshed concept was of considerable interest to myself, or to me. As a member of the community for over 40 years, I had seen a fair number of men retire. Some had planned for their retirement, many had not, resulting in isolation becoming a factor. Whereas for years, like Punch had pointed out, they had associated for years with a group of workmates, suddenly they discovered that they were just not that, or they were just that, workmates, not really friends, and quickly lost their association with these people. The slides video Punch has on there right now is parts of our shed. We have an upstairs called the Man Cave. You got to pardon me for the shakiness in this, but I'm getting a little old. And anyway, this is the upstairs lounge, and has TV, games tables, pool table, etc. And it's just a gathering place for many. As I said, first 3 years they just became past friends. They quickly lost their association with these people, and in many cases, they ended up in a recliner in front of a television. Their future lifespan was reduced to a few short years. In some cases, it led to suicide, and retirement turned into a health issue rather than a best part of your life. Isolation is a disease, and isolation kills. Mensheds provides an alternative to this for many, and our membership is an indication of this. We have retired tradesmen, salesmen, oil patch workers, military, construction business owners, as well as some younger men that are still in the workforce. Membership growth, of course, has been stunned by the pandemic. We are currently stand at 32 members, but have a number of men waiting in the shadows for our reopening. The picture of our welcome sign, which Punch has there somewhere, is what we decided we wanted to stand for in our community. Due to the exceptional support of a local businessman, as you can see from the slides here, we have a 30-foot by 80-foot truck bay to use as a home. In addition to the actual bay, there's the upstairs, which you've just seen, and there's also a front office, which has 2 offices for both the Menshed and the age-friendly Cold Lake office. A recent project during the pandemic was the production of the 80 comfort birds, which you've seen earlier. The smiles and expressions of appreciation were worth more than any financial reward we could ever have provided. At startup, we applied for and received a New Horizons grant for seniors in the amount of $25,000 to use as seed money. After surveying prospective members, we learned that the majority, like other sheds, interest was woodworking, and we purchased tools accordingly. We also received a considerable number of tools and a significant amount of material from donations within the community. You have to love people that are either downsizing or moving. As a result of this, we have a very comprehensive and well-stocked shop. Early in our conception, we sought ways to provide ongoing funding to sustain ourselves and considered a winter ice fishing tournament on the Alberta Family Day. Cold Lake is a location on one of the biggest freshwater lakes in Alberta with a large lake trout population. The idea turned into a huge event with over 400 registered ice fishermen participating and a waiting list. Huge donations from the business community amounted to in excess of $10,000 in prizes, which contributed towards its success, and it's now become an annual event. We estimate it brings close to $1 million or more into the city. Cold Lake Menshed in the first year took a portion of the grant money, of the Horizons grant money, and the members built an ice fishing shack, which was raffled off. That raised over $10,000. The net amount raised for the tournament was over $28,000. All of this as a result of 4 guys from Cold Lake Menshed looking for a fundraiser. This year's tournament was again totally registered with 400 entries by the end of November, and again a huge success. We now run the tournament under the auspices of the Age Friendly umbrella, which provides funding in particular core funding for both organizations. Because men are not as gregarious as women and can sit shoulder to shoulder with far less conversation, Mensheds are a major contributor to men's health. Men suffer from health issues, but because of our attitude, the macho thing, it is often not recognized or apparent. This lack of recognition leads to a lack of funding for men's health issues and projects that could help prevent or alleviate the situations. Again, as I said earlier, isolation is a disease, and isolation kills men. If we are able to save just one man's life, that's a huge success. If we save even more, it would be a breakthrough. Australia, Great Britain, and Ireland have come to the recognition of the problem and throw huge resources to their Mensheds organizations, both monetary and physical support, such as meeting places. Currently in Canada, that support is minimal and comes primarily from service clubs and the private sector. This is something that we would like to see change. Picture on there that Punch has on there is our welcome sign at the door to our shed. It's what we've stand for. And by taking the word welcome, we've converted it into what we want to produce with the sharing of wisdom, equality, learning, community, outreach, mentoring, and experience. The first meeting we had to start up the shed, we had about 24 men show up, and we sat there and we discussed who had been around how long. And on average, the men that were there had 40 years of experience. Multiply 40 by 24, and you get 9,000 years of experience. And that's what's in Menshed. Thank you.
Brian.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is attentive, because I can put a whole room to sleep in no time. My name's Brian Christensen. I am with the Downtown Menshed. A little history about myself. 2013, my wife went into long-term care for Alzheimer's. And at that time, I was so happy to be alone, as anybody that's been a caregiver can relate to. But then it started getting a little old, and I was getting up later and later in the mornings, and didn't really have anything to do. And if I did have something to do, I was too lazy to do it. Starting to get isolated. And I heard somewhere about Menshed. To this day, I can't remember where I heard about it. And it was at Sage. So I went to Sage, went downstairs in the room there. And as soon as I opened the door, I had, excuse me, I had a feeling that they'd just been waiting for me. Like it was so, I've never had that feeling where you feel that welcome before, and everybody just sat down and started chatting, and it was a great experience. I stayed with the Menshed, and what we were doing was doing presentations. A fellow by the name of Lawrence McKnight started this shed along with Punch and Michael and Amanda, and he was bringing speakers in, and we were doing presentations, and that seemed to be going over pretty good. And then one day we're upstairs having coffee, and we'd always been trying to find a woodworking room, a place where we could get together and make stuff like Mensheds are supposed to be. And so we took a vote one day, and they decided that there wasn't any of the guys interested in woodworking. So we got rid of that idea, stuck with the presentations. Amanda has just been so wonderful for our group, all of Sage, but specifically Amanda. We had one set up where we went to a junior high, all us seniors from Sage and the Shed. And the grade 7 class were tasked with going out and finding something that they didn't know what it was, something old. So, and then us old people went in, and we explained to them what it was, and they explained to us what their stuff was. And it was just so great. The biggest thing that stumped the young kids was a Brownie camera. They could not for the life of them figure out what that was for. But we also did that at East Glen School, and it's great because it's surprising how well seniors and young adults get along. Hundreds of years between them, but this is, I got to tell you about this slide. We went to the public garden at Northland, and specifically to talk about bees. And the fellow there with the cane, his name is Tim. And at the front of this area, they had chickens in a pen. And Tim went look at the chickens. He was at this end, and then he walked this way, and all the chickens followed him. And he walked back, and the chickens followed him back again. So we called him the chicken whisperer. Activities like that, we went out. There was just so much that we had done. And then COVID hit, and there's our thing of explaining things to the young kids. And then COVID hit, and we realized that we had turned into a very cohesive group of men. And guys were having friend relationships outside of the shed. You know, we get together with each other for coffee and whatnot. So somebody come up with the idea of having Zoom platforms. And the lady at the university, Anastasia Lim, she was instrumental in finding us speakers. We just had a great one with partnered with SAGE, the U of A, and Downtown Menshed, a panel discussion for 2 days on alternative energy. That was very interesting. One thing we did is we also formed a relationship with a group from Wales called the Menshed in Cardiff, Wales. And they would join our meetings. Problem is our meetings were over about 10 o'clock their time. And they were just couldn't wait that long for their Guinness. So, but that was a great group because you get to think no matter how far apart people are, they're still very familiar. They did programs on Wales for us, presentations, coal mining industry, which was all of Wales at the time. And eventually the time difference got to them, but we've been talking about doing it again with some other groups. It's starting to ramble a little bit here. This is one of our outside meetings. That's Tim, Lawrence, myself, Bruce, Mohammed, and John. Our group, after when we got into the Zoom, everybody was still, oh, there's our 100th meeting after COVID. We'd had 100 meetings, and I ate the cake myself, as you can tell. And this is in our new digs. We are now located in the First Presbyterian Church on 105th Street. And they have a woodworking shop downstairs. They have meeting rooms. They have a huge kitchen. They've got a big 10-burner stove down there, dishwasher and everything. And we're about to have our second meeting there, where we're gonna have a paint night like we used to do at Sage all the time. The fellow in the red coat is the professional artist from Edmonton, and he comes in and does painting classes for us. Now, what has Menshed done for me? It's really expanded my horizons, and I'm not just focused in a little thing like that anymore. And it stopped me from going into that spiral of self-pity and loneliness that can happen to retired men when they have nothing to do. Another thing they've done is change the way I look at people. I live in Boyle, which is a lot of homeless population there. And I used to look down my nose and sneer at them, but now I feel much better about it. Not only them, but I feel much better about my fellow man and the things that happen. Yes, so that's pretty well it. Short, even with all my ums and ahs, I couldn't get it out to 10 minutes.
I think Brian came out of his shell, and he's taken on responsibility for developing Mensheds Alberta. And he got that whole organization rolling. And he's what I call a foot soldier. doing a heck of a job. So thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ryan. So we're gonna shift gears here and go down to Merv in Calgary. And I put up this shot for you, Merv. There's maybe your place where you're gonna start your discussion about the shed in the Kirby Center. You got your mic on, Merv?
Irv went home.
Hi, now you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I silenced myself. Anyways, I'm from Calgary, and there are 3 Mensheds that I'm representing here. I was going to talk to Calgary Mensheds, but I'll start with Kirby. The Kirby Center is a large senior center in downtown Calgary area, right on the CRT, the LRT and C train line. So it's very convenient to get to. The Kirby Center itself really manages the Menshed and provided a basement room that was furnished from a Rotarian donation. It's just a meeting room, and there's a large independent workshop located in the basement area that was already established there and very active. So members of Kirby pay by the day for the use of it. Joe Boyven, who is from the Calgary Menshed, did a presentation on Mensheds at Kirby, and Kirby decided to form their own one, and they meet on Wednesdays. It was going very well when I joined, but there was no leader in Kirby, as Kirby itself ran the program. So it's mostly just a coffee meeting and then eat lunch in the dining center. They tried to add a games room element to it, but it didn't take. Once COVID hit, though, it was quickly closed, and Zoom was run by the Kirby staff. It was started. Members who could not join came online, but the numbers were really low. Basically, Bob Woods and myself took over the leadership, and Bob is the leader now. And we got the contact list from Kirby itself so that we could get back to each of the 20 guys on the list. But the numbers that actively participated are still low from the previous group, and we've added a few people. Thanks to Bob, we've added a large TV, a computer, good Wi-Fi, and a webcam, so we can run the Zoom from the room and have in-person participation too. Yesterday, 7 people came in person and just 1 person was online. Now, Kirby is an excellent organization and offers many programs that are of interest to members. Recently, we've added pickleball and indoor kite flying by our members. So that is on Kirby. And maybe I should just go to the Greater Forest Lawn, because that's what you see here. Now, Joe Boyven, again, was invited to Greater Forest Lawn, and he talked about Menshed. And so they got interested, and they certainly took off by themselves. So right here, we have Rod in attendance here. Hi, Rod. And he was the one that started the Menshed and leads it, and they have a very active group. So what they did was they worked very hard and took over an area. So they enlarged an area of an existing small shop in the basement of the Greater Forest Lawn building. They've added new tools, including a lathe, compound miter saw, drill press, bandsaw, planer, several hand tools, and small tools. So it's a very well-equipped one. There's Charles drinking coffee, and they do have a lady member there. So, so they've engaged in many projects, including maple cutting boards, 2 small occasional tables, 4 large garden boxes for our kitchen to grow vegetables. So they're helping the kitchen right there at the center too. They're making hanging shelves, repairing things for members of the Greater Forest Lawn, minor repairs to things, Christmas decorations, and also things for the art class. So they sell a lot of things that's offered in the craft shop sale. They get their raw materials where they can, free pallets, discarded doors, donations as garages, and shops cleared out that were cleared out. They've offered classes to students, including high school students, introducing them to the process of making projects and the safe use of hand tools and power tools. Their Mensheds offers the older men a chance to socialize, swap stories, and they have varied backgrounds, not necessarily in trade, but it's a great experience and skills. Once a month, they gather for breakfast at local restaurants, and they've added some field trips and a speaker on health issues. There are 8 core members and others that occasionally join. So they've got a very thriving Menshed. And so we had a bike shed over at Calgary Shed, and that had to close down. So they've invited us to set up our shed, our bike shed over at Greater Forest Lawn. And you can see Tyrone, one of our members, working on bikes. We're working on a project to supply 20 bikes to a high school so that they can teach kids that don't have bikes how to ride and how to take care of them. So that's one of the projects. We've through the Calgary Shed, Bike Shed has given over 70 bikes, including 40 to something called YYC Kids Ride. And last year they gave away 450 bikes. We helped them a lot with fixing the bikes, and we'll continue to do that again this year too. So the Bike Shed is actually something that I'm very proud of. Here we gave 7 kids bikes to the Margaret Chisholm home, and that was refugee families' first day when they arrive in Calgary, and then they find accommodation for them. So we've given them bikes 2 times. So it's we get bikes from donations. We get bikes from all over the place, including the landfills. Now we're trying to get permission to go to the landfills again to get more bikes, because there's going to be a lot of demand for them. And we had a lot of demand during COVID because bikes were really, really desired. This is Bob, and he's working from home and doing the Zoom from home. I visited him at his home in Airdrie, and he's the one that runs the Kirby Shed. So he's been very instrumental in Airdrie. He also manages the Poppy campaign that raised over $100,000 last year, and with Meals and Wheels. So he's a very prominent member. Greater Forest Lawn, and we made 4 of those very large garden boxes for one client, and it's for a B&B outside of Calgary, and they're paying full price for them. So it's quite a project, and they'll probably get more of them, but they worked very hard on them and did them very quickly. So then I'm going to switch to the Calgary Menshed, and that's the first one in Calgary. And this is what Joe Boyven wrote. In the winter of 2018, he was listening to the Sunday morning CBC show. Another CBC show. So his interest was piqued when he saw an interview by Doug Mackey in Winnipeg. Doug described the origin and function of Mensheds and extolled their influence on retirees' mental and physical health. He contacted Doug, and as many have experienced, was overwhelmed by the great enthusiasm for Mensheds. Sheds was an excellent fit for CALL, the Calgary Association of Lifelong Learners, which is a much larger organization of seniors that are interested in doing a variety of things and learning things and having speaker series. So, but there are very few offerings for men due to the predominantly female composition of the association. He contacted the executive and suggested they meet and got a good reception. In April, he made a presentation to the monthly CALL Cafe, and they formed the Shed. Several men signed up or were signed, actually more men were signed up by their wives. So, and they began to meet in coffee shops. They were asked to do a sort of ukulele stand project, and they connected with the local makerspace Fuse 33. Later that year, Joe was contacted by the Kirby Association or Center about information on sheds, and they passed on information. Then he was contacted by Confederation Park Senior Center, and they decided to move the shed activities for Calgary Shed over to that center. So it was really an outstanding place, and we really enjoyed it. But also in fall of 2019, Joe again made a presentation to the Forest Lawn Seniors Association, and that's where the Greater Forest Lawn started up from his talk. So Joe has been very influential and very busy. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to curtail the face-to-face meetings in 2020 due to COVID, and we've lost a lot of members because of that. The Confederation Park Senior Center was closed permanently by the Alberta government, even though it was opposed by many seniors. So we survived by turning on Zoom, and John Manuel ran the show. We continued to lose members though, especially the ones not interested in the online stuff. We now have temporary use of the Kirby Menshed room on Wednesdays and hope to increase our in-person meetings through the Zoom. We hope to find another meeting place by summer and the return of former members. Anyways, I could go on a little bit more about the bike shed if you want, but the bike shed started at the Confederation Park Center. I had already been helping the bike lady in Calgary, who's been responsible for passing on 1,200 bikes, mostly to Syrian refugee families. And I thought it was a good thing to continue with the Calgary Menshed. So I got a few guys involved. They gave us a shed, and so I called it the bike shed. And we could only hold 24 bikes in storage in the shed. It was kind of small. Now with Greater Forest Lawn, we have much better access to tools and help, and it's inside, so we're not freezing. And so I think that the bike shed has really sort of taken off on its own, and we have a number of ladies that want to participate. So that's why bike shed is good, because it's not only men's shed, but also women's shed at the same time, because we don't care who joins in. I got the red screen, so I think I can close off now. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Merv. Okay, now, Amanda, are we having a break?
10-minute break would be good right now, before Amanda.
Okay, well,
So I'll just quickly share my screen if that's okay. So yeah, we'll be having a 10-minute break if that's okay with everyone. We want to recognize that Zoom fatigue is very real, so we could also use the 10 minutes to process and digest all the wonderful information and story that our guest speakers has shared so far. So please feel free to turn off your cameras and come back in 10 minutes. So we'll see you at 10:35. All right. Ready when you are, Punch. And I think Amanda, you're next.
are you back, Amanda?
I am.
Okay,
Okay,
take it away.
wonderful. One of my favorite discussions surrounding Mensheds is the topic of women and where they fit within the Menshed movement. A common assumption and something that I often hear that comes up is that Mensheds are sexist and exclusive of women. And that's not true. And once you understand why Mensheds came to be and why they're structured in the way that they're structured, then you understand that Mensheds can be, that Mensheds are beneficial to everyone, to men, to women, to youth, to the community as a whole. And Mensheds were created to respond to a very specific need, a safe space for men of all ages, all backgrounds, to get together in an environment that is conducive to maintaining or increasing their health and well-being. And while every Menshed is unique, because each group of men in those sheds is unique, the underlying design of a Menshed is the same, and it's very intentional in the way that it's structured. And a shed is essentially a grassroots health initiative that's disguised as a community hangout. And the structure allows Mensheds to reach men that other groups or, that other, professional supports can't reach. That's why it's so important. A guy might not want to go to therapy, but he'll hang out at a shed and he'll talk with the guys. And it's really important to have these safe male spaces. And the shed environment is guided by the men involved. It's for men by men. And the structure addresses the fact that men socialize differently than women. You'll often hear in Menshed conversation the term shoulder to shoulder. The phrase is women talk face to face, men talk shoulder to shoulder. Guys are more likely to open up and have a conversation while their hands are busy doing something. And it's really good to have this structure because it allows for sort of natural peer support, and it creates a safe environment that with time facilitates trust and friendships among the men. And that, of course, in turn gives men permission to open up and discuss personal things with each other. And that's a discussion that might not happen anywhere else. Now, women play an important role in ensuring that positive spaces for men exist. I always joke with my shed colleagues, all of whom are men, that every good shed needs a great woman. Some days they agree with me, some days they don't, but that's what I say. So women like me, we work behind the scenes. The Shed Initiative is an organic, community-based process that's led by Men for Men, but the reality is that the process needs support to help men discover and to embrace it. And that's where women come in. Women are great connectors and we're great motivators. Some might use the term nagging. I like the term motivational speaking. Women understand the importance of things like building friendships, having a sense of purpose, and connecting and supporting with each other. And we want the men in our lives to have that also. And women are usually the ones who get their husbands, their fathers, their brothers involved in sheds because it's good for them. And if we're being honest, it's good for us too. I know Punch alluded to the fact that, you know, once people retire and they're together 24/7, that can be a little tiring. So if we have a place to send the men in our lives where they can go, they can do something, they come back happy and healthy, and they have stories to share, that can save marriages. Punch, can I have the next slide, please? So we encourage women not to attend sheds for their own purposes so that it doesn't sort of interfere with that intentional structure. It's not done to exclude women, it's done to support men in a setting that supports men's mental health. That being said, women do attend sheds in a variety of ways. Most men's sheds do allow women to attend in certain circumstances. Some sheds are co-ed sheds. They have no problem with that. Some sheds have special ladies' nights or special events where women can come into the shed, take part in the activities, whether that's a woodworking project or a painting project, learning to repair a bicycle. And it's good because these events give the shedders an opportunity to share their skills and knowledge with women in their lives and in their community. I know some of our sheds have hosted barbecues where shedders bring a wife, a daughter, you know, a female member of their family in and get to know what the guys are doing. Here in Edmonton, we've also had a few women attend sheds as a support for a man attending a shed. For example, we've had a few wives that have had to drag their reluctant husbands out to a shed gathering. And usually after a couple sessions, the husbands were able to attend on their own as their comfort levels within the group increase. And we actually had one female support worker who would bring her client to one of our sheds, but her role was to assist him to take part in the activities. And she was very good at helping him participate, but not interacting as a shedder herself. She did what she could behind her client to help him take part. And of course, she tried to only attend when absolutely necessary so that she didn't interfere with that shed dynamic. Something that's become quite popular in parts of the world like Australia are women's sheds. And these are spaces that are dedicated to women who want to be productive and engaged. This can be particularly helpful for women who maybe don't have a spouse or don't have family nearby, maybe who have also retired from a long career outside of the home, and they still want to be connected to the community at large. Can I have the next slide, please, Punch? So women have a role in sheds. It's just a different role than what men have in sheds. Women around the world have played a major role in supporting the whole Menshed initiative. There actually was a recent study in the UK, and it showed, I was quite surprised, that 80% of their established and developing sheds are currently being led by women. That could be sort of as a lead facilitator, in the person who does the day-to-day, making sure the space is unlocked, making sure the coffee pot's turned on. Then they step back when the guys are in the space. And another big role for women in the UK is in procuring funds for shed sustainability. I haven't seen a study like that here in Canada, but I have a feeling that a lot of the sheds do have women working to support them behind the scenes in some capacity. That's certainly the case here. And I know a lot of the women that I know that are involved in sheds are quite careful to try to stay behind the scenes as much as possible. Women can do things like help to secure space for shedders to meet, bridge connections between other organizations and groups that might help support sheds, hosting conversations with a group of men to see who's interested, what a shed can do, finding speakers and supplies for shed activities. And we know that men are much more likely to engage in the risk-taking behaviors, male isolation, loneliness, depression, and suicide rates are actually very high. And most men in a mixed group will tend to stick to those traditional identities of masculinity, being strong, in control, not showing any sort of vulnerability. And as women, we need to ensure that there are safe spaces for the men in our lives to be empowered and encouraged to express themselves. And if women are present in the shed, the dynamic changes. Women tend to take over. It's just what we do. I've noticed that myself. Men might not want to open up. Taboo topics relating to men's health won't be talked about in a serious way. If women are present, those conversations are jokes, but really they should be serious conversations. So allowing men to gather in a setting that is conducive to improving their well-being is not only beneficial to men, but to women and to children as well. And there was a research project that was done, I think it was about 2016, by a group from Michigan State University, I want to say. And so they were looking at the effects of fathers' mental health on language and cognitive development in young children, as well as the effects on areas such as social skill development of those same children later in life. And interestingly, they found that the fathers who had higher levels of stress and depression tended to have toddlers whose language and cognition skills were underdeveloped. So the conclusion is, and rightly so, that fathers are just as important as mothers in providing emotional support for the well-being of their children. And we all want men in our lives who are better at caring for themselves, because then they're better at caring for others. Happy, healthy men are happy, healthy partners, spouses, fathers. That in turn reduces family and gender-based violence. Mensheds support men who want to positively interact with each other, their spouses, their children, their community as a whole. Sheds don't just benefit men, sheds benefit everybody. And women can work behind the scenes to ensure that we allow these spaces for men. And that's my bit.
Thanks, Amanda. Special thank you to to Karen and her team at Sage for allowing Amanda to play a fantastic role with Menshed development, not only in Edmonton, but right across the province. It's been much appreciated, and we do appreciate Amanda's female perspective. So thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Karen. Michael.
I'm here. Thank you so much, Punch. And thank you to everybody that's spoken before me. My job now is to underline some of the learnings that we've shared with you this morning. So I'm going to do that, but I'll introduce myself first of all. I'm a social worker with the City of Edmonton, and my portfolio is engaging men and boys in building healthy relationships. So Mensheds shines a light on that work for me in a big way, and I'll explain that to you. I have to share with you that social workers always have to look at the hats they're wearing, and I wear two hats. Sometimes I'm a social worker, but I'm a shedder as well, and I attend the shed meetings as often as I can at the downtown shed, and they tell me that I'm welcomed at the table, and I truly feel welcomed at the table, and I think I could probably walk into any shed in the world, and I would feel welcome. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. I want to tell you how I got involved in looking at sheds. In 2011, the city was conducting an environmental scan. We were trying to understand how we could support the community, build community capacity to support men. And one of the questions was, what can we do to build sustainable efforts in our communities to do just that, to support men? And I really like that direction as a man. I'm pretty keen on it as a social worker as well. I think men should thrive in their communities and not rely on professionals to guide them in doing so. And I guess I thought that an environmental scan meant that I should go out and look at how we construct healthy environments in which men might thrive. And I mean, thrive in a truly human sense, not just in the way that they've been socialized, but in expressing all aspects of themselves. I interviewed a lot of service providers in doing that environmental scan, and a lot of them warned me that the community still wants to fix men. We have this approach or this sense that men are somehow broken, and we need to provide supports to fix them. And men want to go to places where they can make friends and seek support. They want to engage in activities because it's valuable to them and not because they're broken. So in doing my lit review, I came across the Australian men's movement, and they were talking about health by stealth. That kind of appealed to me. They were building healthy environments in which men can thrive, not in which men are broken, but in which men put in environments that allow them to be themselves, will assemble themselves in good ways. And I was really intrigued by that. And I think that's an important role that we as social workers have to play, not to label people as broken, but just make sure they're in environments where they're going to truly thrive. So I began to push that as a key direction in the work that I was doing. I was like that monkey with the symbols, making lots of noise, saying Mensheds, Mensheds, and that enabled me to be discovered by Punch Jackson, who was doing things much in the same way, but from the other side. He was doing things from the community side, whereas I was with the city. And he introduced me to Amanda and to Brian, Wayne, and Merv, who are all interested in doing this work. So there's almost 100 research articles now, peer-reviewed research articles supporting the work that Mensheds do. That we've described the positive benefits, and it's certainly it's verifiable in the research. And I just want to draw you to the name of Barry Golding, who is an Australian. He's an academic. I think education is his primary background. I think he coined the term as well, shoulder to shoulder, and he's been looking at the Menshed movement since it first evolved in probably the 1990s in Australia. He's written a book just recently published in which he's looked at the benefits of sheds, particularly in the context of restarting them post-COVID. So he's looked at all the research and compiled an extremely accessible book that is titled "Broadening the Men's Shed Movement 2021." So if you want to follow up and see the research and read a very accessible book, that's a good place to go. If I could have the next slide, please. So one of the things that Punch and I did early on is we excited the city to look at Mensheds and to see where they were happening in Alberta. And there was only one happening in Alberta back at that time, 2016, I think it was, and that was in Camrose, Alberta. So we decided we would head down to Camrose and have a look and see what they were doing down there. And I think at this point, we met a fellow by the name of Clarence Hastings, who was a colleague, a social worker, a rural social worker who had helped these men to organize their very first shed. And I just want to dedicate our presentation today to Clarence. Because Clarence passed away rather suddenly early last week, but not before. He was working tirelessly on organizing the Menshed movement at the local, at the provincial, and at the national level. So we owe an awful lot to Clarence, and I'm just very grateful that he's helped us to be here today. In speaking with the shedders down there, these are one of the shedders that were located in one of these historical settings. So they were in the Old Timers Museum in Camrose, welcomed in there because their presence helped with insurance and things like that, and they were able to do some of the maintenance around the museum and things like that. So they were just they were in a wonderful space there. When we walked in, and I asked them, well, how have you set this up, and what's an important guiding principle you would want me to know about in building Mensheds? And they said, Michael, just keep it simple. If you can have some guys around and a cup of coffee and a table and some sense of community work, you'll have a successful shed. Just keep it simple. So I thought, well, that's going to be pretty easy to research and provide evidence that sheds are successful in doing what they do. Simple inputs should equal simple outputs, right? Can we have a look at the next slide? So there we are. Turns out that sheds aren't so simple, even though the inputs are simple. They are very complex in terms of doing research. And the reasons for that are because they're all dissimilar. Sheds are assembled by every group of men to meet their particular needs, and there are no two sheds in the world that are exactly alike. They operate in different contexts. There are urban sheds, there are rural sheds, there are sheds across culture. It's very difficult to get two sheds that you can actually do a comparable sort of a study with. They're informal. People don't come in and put down a logic model and say, here's what we're doing, this is program. If we follow these steps, we're going to get to some sort of a conclusion. They are just organized by the guys themselves. And as a result of that, they're very, very complex entities to try and understand. Next slide, please. So who benefits from Mensheds? Well, we've heard today that pretty well everybody does. We know as we go around the circle there that men who are in sheds benefit. A couple there of guys having coffee and just socializing. We know that it has benefits for partners and families, and outcomes or positive outcomes for community partners, such as SAGE would be an example. Medical support services, there's all a variety of community partners that can partner with Mensheds, and we've had a lot of them with the downtown shed over the last year. We also have important outcomes, positive outcomes for the communities themselves. Let's just have a look at what they're doing for each one of these groups. The outcome for shedders is obvious. There's the decrease in social isolation, and that increase in feelings of self-esteem and usefulness and vitality and belonging that comes about from being involved in some sort of activities that are challenging and enjoyable. Turns out who participates in sheds? Well, it turns out that everybody does. I've been working with guys for a long period of time and helping them to re-socialize in a variety of different ways. I've worked with men who are having some sort of bad times in their lives and helping them get their feet on the ground. Men like to come together and just, they love to laugh, to learn, to solve problems. As a shedder myself, I went to a garage sale one day and I found a planer, a hand planer, which I thought would be a good score. It was very cheap. I took it home, and the very first thing I wanted to do was to take it all apart, which I did. I got the pieces all of my workbench, and then I realized that I didn't have a clue how to put the hand planer back together. Well, if I go to a men's shed, there are people there with that knowledge, and so it doesn't take long to strike up a conversation, explain a problem I've got myself in, and my plane is back together again now and sharpened, and I'm ready to take it into some place and show people that I can shave wood. I have no real idea why I'm going to be shaving wood, but I know that I can do it successfully, and that's given me a sense of pride and joy in my life. Older men who once worked in the trades or blue collar work, blue collar jobs, or any man that was raised in a traditional, socialized in traditional sort of male values, is interested in a men's shed. They attract people with men with special needs, with social anxiety, with special learning needs. All manner of men can come to a shed and find that it's a comfortable place to socialize and to find good ways of expressing themselves. We actually surveyed our shedders just early as we were forming sheds, and we spoke to about 90 men and learned that the median age for our urban population was actually about 60 years of age, ranging anywhere from 25 to 79 years old. And we found that most shedders actually were not in a relationship at the time. About 20% of them were divorced, 15% of them were widowed, and 30% had been bachelors all their lives. The remaining 35% were in relationships. And their partners were happy to have them attend, as we've heard, because they're inclusive, supportive, creative spaces to hang out and get out of the house sometimes. Partners and families therefore benefit just from the personal time that men invest in the men's sheds, because that's time that the family can do what families need to do as well, and partners need to do for themselves in terms of self-care and development. So having men out of the house is in fact good for everyone some of the time. Community partners. Well, if we look at the healthcare system, sheds clearly are a benefit, because They provide a place where we can send men who can then resolve their feelings of loneliness, anxiety, or depression, which are otherwise things that we might find get to a critical level, and we need to treat them. Treat them with medications and therapy and all manner of expensive interventions. And sheds provide a way of avoiding that. Just I don't know how this would have happened. My timer was sitting on my screen here, and I know I'm looking for the autumn colors to show up, and she has disappeared from my screen entirely.
You're on
Oh
yellow.
no, I'm here. That popped up for you, Hera.
So if you want to jump down then, Punch, to the, can we go to slide 7? Which is the group slide of everybody showing around. So Mensheds provide healing places, they're healing spaces where men can get the supports they need before they become in a bad way in society or in their communities. But they're also communities of practice. And I just think this is really important, that sheds are also places where guys can go to learn and educate themselves on what's happening in their community and how to look after themselves and just becoming and better involved in the community. Golding, Barry Golding talks about a new way of learning provided by sheds, which is a place where men can go to learn things. Men who are naturally opposed to any sort of external control can come there and be in control of their learning. So that's what benefits sheds, or benefits men in sheds. Let's go to the very last slide, and I'll just introduce you to some language around Mensheds. Maybe I'll read you a poem. A big, and I'll do this very, very quickly. There's a new form of poetry emerging called Menshed poetry. And I've been following it for years on the internet. And my goal is to become the Nobel or the poet laureate of Edmonton when I finally do retire. But I wanted to read to you a poem that was written by a fellow in Australia. If I can get to it there. So it's called My Story. The past several months have been lonely for me. The virus has closed me down. I really have felt that I'm just like a tomb when none of my guys are around. But now the restrictions are starting to lift, and I hope that it won't be too long before I'm filled once again with the sounds of hammers and laughter and song. Then I will feel that my life is worthwhile and that I could ask for no more than seeing my men live a healthier life. That's what a Menshed is for. So I think the poetry sums it up as well as any of the research in why Mensheds are good places to go. And I'll leave it with that. If we're on the last slide, you're just seeing a bit of language that you can translate into shed speak if you want to become a bit more acquainted with how to talk at a shed. So they're informal places, but we say sheds happen. We say that they're inclusive. No man's an island in shed talk. They're fun educational places. Men learn to talk, or men to talk and learn shoulder to shoulder. They're healing spaces in shed speak, health by stealth, and they're community oriented. And this one is for Amanda. Mensheds because she said. Thanks.
Wow. I think we've covered a lot of ground here this morning. The what's up on the screen right now are some quick resources that the Canadian Mensheds Association has a toolkit for starting sheds that you might want to look at. There's a site for the Mensheds that are in Edmonton, and there, if you're wanting information, you could send an email to the Mensheds in Edmonton. Cindy, do you want us to start to talk a bit about, I'll take the screen down, and we can talk a little bit about rambling about the future, but I think since there's such a wide audience here from across Alberta, I think you should just be aware of where the existing sheds are right now. We have Beacon Heights in Edmonton, the downtown shed in Edmonton, CISA in Edmonton. We have Canada's first Indigenous shed at Bentaro Traditional Healing Society, and we have another shed in Edmonton at Bonnie Doon. We have 2 sheds in Grand Prairie, 1 in Cold Lake, 1 in Camrose, 1 in Spruce View, and 3 or 4, depending on how you're counting it, in Calgary. So that's where the sheds are across the province. We've had a fantastic number of requests from agencies like FCSS across the province, where workers in FCSS are doing work with men in the community and running sessions, trying to find out exactly what the guys are looking for. So I think that this presentation will help give more background to those people. There are seniors agencies across the province that are interested in Mensheds. But I think if you reflect on Amanda's comments, that sheds are not really programs, they're initiatives. They're run by men for men. And so the challenge for organizers in these agencies is to figure out how they change their orientation in terms of working with the men in their particular agencies, so that it is not the program people in an agency telling men what to do, but figuring out how that relationship works so that men are in control of the Menshed. Any other thoughts that jump to mind here before we talk about more where things are going from a provincial perspective and a national perspective? No? Okay. So I mentioned earlier that Brian Christensen had started the Provincial Association for Mensheds, and that's in the mill, as is the development of a Canadian Menshed, a formalization of the Canadian Mensheds movement, so that we have a mechanism to talk more formally with national agencies and the federal government. We're looking at, I use the phrase crack the nut all the time about the urban centers, because in Canada, Mensheds are not, they're not the place where sheds really take off. And the main barrier to shed development in urban centers is the cost of space. And we haven't reached the point yet where people are stepping up like they did in Cold Lake. I'm not sure Wayne made that point strong enough, but the shed that he has was donated to them by a member of the community. And that was a significant contribution in terms of a space that was 30 by 80 and building in utility costs. This is where we need some of our developers, our foundations to be able to step up and provide space. There are limitations, you know. Sage is an example of that, where they provided the initial space for those guys to get their sheds started, but they don't have a room big enough. They don't have the space in that building for a workshop if the guys wanted to do that. So there's all kinds of challenges in the urban settings. Rural communities seem to be able to find space a lot easier. Let's see, what else we got here. Oh, I don't want to forget this. Wayne Warner and the guys in Cold Lake are going to step up and run the first Mensheds conference in Alberta. And that will take place in September. And if Wayne wants to jump in and tell us the exact date, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Punch. We're running September 21st to 23rd, with the 21st being sort of the arrival day, so you probably won't be here till afternoon or evening, with session all day on the 22nd. 23rd, sort of early sessions, and we're got a few activities that are there for you if you want to attend. We're trying to line up a tour of the base for anybody that wants to get up close to an F-18 before we discard them or sell them to somebody else. We've also got numerous things around town that are of interest. So if you want to bring the wife as well, she's perfectly welcome. She can come out. We're going to try and have activities. Depending on registration, we'll see if there's activities for the female side of the group that comes out as well. So mark your calendar, September 21st, 23rd, and get a hold of us if you want to register real early. But anyway, that's when it is, where it is. It's a place to be at for September.
Okay, and I think the theme of the conference is going to be focused on starting sheds. So that, I think, is where a lot of the people are at across Alberta. And I think getting some of the key principles in mind and listening to some of the people who've started sheds, whether those are sheds that have been started independently or sheds that have been sponsored by organizations like SAGE. I think it'll be very beneficial for the long-range development of sheds in Alberta. I just want to mention about the speed that sheds can expand. They went from one shed in Australia in 1995, and there are now over 1,200 sheds in Australia. They went from no sheds in Ireland, and within 18 months, they had 450 sheds. So that they have 10,000 men involved in sheds in Ireland. It's the highest per capita in the world. So that people are beginning to catch on to what the value of this shed is, and how in these times where the pressures from COVID, all these kinds of things that have created so many issues in terms of mental health, people are starting to recognize that this innocuous little thing called a shed is having a huge impact for men, and now starting to understand how the sheds adapt and adjust for women, so that those are major things happening across the world. I think the fact that the Minister of Addictions and Mental Health federally has invited the president of Mensheds Association of BC to come to a roundtable with her on Friday is a significant step forward in terms of that process. Now, panel, anything else you would like to add before we open up for questions?
I would just like to address Wayne's comment about you can bring your wife. The wives can bring their husbands to this too. Make your husband go.
Thanks, Amanda.
Okay, questions. Anybody have questions they would like us to try and answer?
And we saw that there was one in the chat, and I think people have been answering, but just in case people don't have access to the chat, Carolyn asked about funding to start a shed and where it comes from. So maybe some of the other speakers can jump in as well.
Okay, I'll address this from a national perspective. There's an agency, an organization called Help Age Canada, and they have a section for Mensheds, and there is a startup grant of $1,000 for a new shed. It must be a new shed. But it's there. So get in line before the money runs out. Is anybody else going to address the funding issue?
You know, I think part of it too is you have to be really creative to get a shed off the ground. And sometimes it's, you know, traditional funding streams. And sometimes, you know, you have to ask anybody and everybody, do you have a space? Do you have some tools? Do you have games? Do you, you know, send us some coffee? Do you, you know, what can you do to help us get a shed off the ground? And, you know, so, some of our sheds have started very small, but they've started small and they've grown from there. Sometimes it's easier to start a small shed and grow it than try to wait till you have everything in place to have a giant shed. We're still waiting for that in Edmonton. So instead we've got several little sheds. You know, sometimes it's, you just have to be creative.
The thing that popped up there at the bottom about insurance, in British Columbia, the Provincial Association has developed an umbrella insurance liability insurance policy, and the sheds can buy into it. We're just at the stage in Alberta where we are doing that within Edmonton and looking at how we expand that to other sheds. So liability insurance, if you're looking at it from around the province, the company that is doing the best, making the best effort for us has been Cooperators Insurance. And so we're linking things from a local level, a provincial level, and now a national level to try to create a giant umbrella for insurance across the province. Now, we have been making an assumption, rightly or wrongly, that sheds, if they're sponsored, are covered by their sponsoring agency. But there are so many wrinkles to this that are they covered when the guys go out to the beekeeper's place, or when the guys go on tour? You know, so that's why we've been working hard trying to get insurance resolved in Edmonton and then across the province. Any other questions?
There's a few raised hands. So Doug and Michael, feel free to speak. And then afterwards, I'll invite Diane to share a bit more about her event. So go ahead, Doug.
Okay, thanks. I just recently moved into a 55 plus development in just outside of the city of Edmonton and in Spruce Grove, and there, you know, there's this beautiful sort of clubhouse that's a separate building, but I mean, is it always sort of, I know these things can be different iterations and stuff as they get developed and stuff, but I mean, there seems to be a tremendous opportunity there in my little space for a coffee place, you know, a meeting place, very economical and available through me to access to that. The thing sits empty all the time from what I can see, and there's the pool tables and some big round tables for playing games or sitting around in clusters and stuff like that. And there's an exercise room downstairs and stuff. But is it always need to have an idea that it's got to be a workspace, a sort of a, you know, an industrial space like the garage kind of thing, the shed with power tools and stuff like that?
I think it starts with exactly what you're describing. A group of guys get together over coffee, and it can go in any one of 100 different directions. And but the first step is the coffee pot and the table and the guys around the table talking.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's. I mean, you know, I notice we just moved, but into the place. But last year, you know, they started a garden, and so because the place is not fully developed, and so there was quite a nice little garden set up there, and people, you know, must have gotten together in their residence to grow, you know, vegetables and stuff, potatoes and corn and stuff like that, and so that's a, you know, a physical attraction component sort of thing. And I mean, when you talk about sort of the rural sort of abilities or tendencies for getting together, I mean, I used to work in Alberta agriculture for many years, and you know, the rural coffee shop at the corner of the highway and the stop sign sort of thing was a fixture, still is probably, and you know, that's an institution of long standing in the rural areas of people migrating to a coffee place, you know, at a truck stop or something like that, because they were living in rural, you know, farm operations and stuff like that. But you know, that's an illustration of this tendency for guys to want to get together to have a coffee on an ad hoc but regular basis.
Michael, Jay, did you have a question?
Yes, sorry if I'm not talking too loud. Yeah, lately I've been seeing more and more men about my age, you know, 68, whatever, not quite retired, questioning, but there still seems to be like, I'm not quite ready. So that's a hard one to deal with, kind of like you talk to people, you know, they explain that, you know, life is, but I'm not quite ready. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it seems to be a very prevalent attitude. I've been going to the senior center now, volunteering and that, and I'm simply doing that because I want to fill my life, kind of thing. And I didn't know all this was going on, and so probably so many men are not aware. So is there a way that we have kind of a central explanation that, you know, you can, I don't know if I'm making sense, but.
I think that Cindy and Mei Li will be putting together a package of resources along with the video so that anyone who is on the mailing list for CORE will get that information so that you would be able to look at the resource, the site for the Canadian Mensheds Association. We'll figure out a way so that you could actually see what the guys are doing in BC and here in Alberta. So that will, hopefully that will help you as you make that transition to eventually becoming ready.
Could I just add a bit to that? Because there's interesting research looking at how men leave the workforce. When we're in the workforce, we're still able to live up to sort of the ideal guy, right? We're able to bring in a good income. We're hanging around with the guys. We're doing something productive with our hands often, or with our heads, right? But we're still proving ourselves as men. And then when we leave, we're outside of that environment in something new where we don't necessarily feel like we live up to what the standard of a guy should be. And what Mensheds seem to offer is a place for guys to redefine themselves. And what has been noted by researchers is that when men get involved in doing something that's challenging and kind of fun and gives back to the community, they expand their understanding of what it means to be a man. And that's how they maintain their health. So Michael, you're exactly on, I think, an important phenomenon there that we need to help men address as they leave the workforce.
Michael. Oh, I'm sorry. Going on with that, Michael, I noticed even it's been, like personally, it's been very hard to break from the workforce. It's almost like, I know now I'm retired, but it's like, I have to earn this little bit of coffee money kind of thing to keep up my image, you know, like I'm willing to go out and, you know, just earn a few extra dollars just to, now maybe this is very personal, but I think men do experience this. And then you feel like you go through a period where you feel like you don't matter too much anymore. Like, you know, like because you're not earning and you're not, anyway, I won't go on further. But
Well, Michael, I think you just start to ease your way into a shed. That's another way to do it. So you may start by just finding a shed close by and volunteering a little bit of your time. And then eventually you may be ready to make the big step.
You got to remember, Michael, that with the Mensheds, it's not like whatever, Lions or any of the clubs like that. You come and go as you wish. You know, it's not every Thursday is a meeting and you have to be there and sign in and do that. It's come this Thursday, come next Thursday, don't come the week after. You know, you can come as you wish. You're not tied to anything. But at the same time, you can tie yourself to it.
And one of the great aspects of a shed, because most sheds do give back to the community in some way. So for older men, it helps because you're within a group of your peers. You're working on things that matter. You know, whether it's building garden boxes, whether it's, you know, doing little maintenance things for the community, whether it's fixing bicycles, that's still really important work. And it really gives people a lot of, you know, value and purpose. And that's, everybody needs that at all stages of our life. And so sheds can help sort of give guys that. And women's sheds can give women that. You know, when you feel like you're not contributing once, well, you know, once you hit that retirement age, you're still contributing. You're just contributing in a different way.
I think the project that Brian Christensen referred to with the students in terms of sharing information about the past, in some of the sheds, the older guys were teaching the younger guys about the tools from the past, you know, the hand tools, and the younger guys were teaching the old guys about how to use their phones. They were teaching them what they could actually do with those phones, how they could communicate with their grandchildren. And it was a marvelous exchange of information. Cindy, are you getting anxious yet?
I see Merv, you have your hand up. Did you have a comment to share?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to add is that one of the benefits of being part of the Menshed is the spin-offs. So you find out that other people are interested in other things or involved in things. So I've gotten involved in the Avro Museum. I've joined a kitchen group to make meals for seniors that are homebound. So I'm learning about cooking. So there's a lot of spin-offs that you never think of, but from the other members, you say, oh, I'm also interested in that. So there's loads of opportunities to join in other things that you never thought you would join in on. Right now, this afternoon, I have to go to an art project, and it's run from University of Calgary, and our stuff is going to be in the gallery for the rest of the month. So quite interesting projects that you can get involved in.
I think too, the sponsoring agencies in many cases, Sage is an example where they may be helping out keep the Menshed going, but there's probably, I don't know, exaggerate, they may have 100 other programs that older men and women take part in. And there's all kinds of socializing opportunities. So it's it's a holistic thing in terms of the sheds fit into something larger fits into the Menshed. So it's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring your attention to one of Sue's questions in the chat. She just wondered if membership fees are a factor of Mensheds, if you wanted to speak to that. And then we also had Lori and Lindell share some examples. If you wanted to share a bit more, you're welcome to do that. We love hearing stories from other places too. So go ahead.
About membership fees, that's something that each shed deals with. And for the most part, the sheds try to have a very minimal fee. They don't want to create any barriers for men to participate. So who else was on there, Maylee?
Lori and Lindell shared a little bit in the chat about what's happening. Lori said that they're using their youth center in the daytime when kids aren't there. I don't know if you want to share a bit more of what's happening in Vulcan. And then Lindell also talked a little bit about Camrose. So I just wanted to highlight those comments.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it for what we've done in Vulcan. We just found a volunteer facilitator, a man, and our youth center program manager is also a man too. So we started with 2 guys there and just started inviting people and putting up our posters. So we're starting to build a little bit of group there and hopefully get a few more people going, and hopefully it evolves into more like a men's shed where it becomes what the group decides they want to do. They seem to be into puzzles, which wasn't really what we had anticipated, but if that's what people are interested in, then that's great.
The fellow from a senior center told me that I would be very, very surprised at the conversations that take place around the puzzle table and how men begin to share stories, share issues, share concerns while they're trying to fit that puzzle together.
Right.
So it's a great tool.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne.
If anyone has stories from other places, feel free to unmute yourselves and share. Sorry, go ahead, Punch.
I think Wayne was going to say something.
No, I'm good, Punch.
I would got a request here if I could. If in this group of people, we could get a list of how many sheds there are represented here, that we don't know about, so we can get working on it with the Alberta Association. So is there anybody here that belongs to a shed that hasn't been mentioned? Or that has been mentioned?
I noticed a chat came up about one starting in Innisfail, their first meeting last night, Brian.
Yeah, I've got that written down, and Vulcan, whatever's develops there, but yeah, I just checking to see.
And I'd like to mention, it's Paul Stalker at
Yeah.
St. Albert has a meeting tonight called Men at Work at the St. Albert Public Library at 6:45. I think it's an hour and a half. And you have to visit the stalbert.ca for Men at Work to join, or it's advised, I guess. And they're trying to focus on strategies and supports for the first meeting. Thank you.
Libraries play a key role across the country in supporting Mensheds by giving them, sometimes it's the initial space that they meet in to get their shed going. So I'm glad to see that Peter Bailey is jumping on the curve there in St. Albert. About the poll, Maylee, you want to hit that poll thing?
Sure, I can do that on my end. Let's see here. I'm gonna launch it right now. Hopefully everyone can see that. Punch, you're a co-host, so it might not show up for you.
Oh, it is.
Okay. So I'll just give everyone a few seconds to answer, but the question says, after the event today, how would you rate your understanding of Mensheds? So the options are very well, moderately well, a little, not at all. So maybe I'll give you 10 more seconds to answer, and then I'll share the results with everyone.
Oh dear, I hope we don't get any not at alls.
Well, one of the
Okay.
challenges that we have for sheds in Canada is that the level of awareness of sheds is very low. And we're trying desperately to find ways to expand the awareness. And we're very thankful to CORE for supporting this presentation today. And hopefully it will help to create awareness around Alberta.
For sure. I see, Michael, you have your hand up, but I just shared the results. So luckily, Amanda, no, not at all. And I'll stop sharing that. And Michael, please go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering, as I'm in Edmonton, if we have any local numbers for the different, to contact the different sheds. Punch, I don't know.
It's on our website, I think. But if you leave, can Michael leave his information in the chat so that we can follow up with him?
Sure.
Yes, for sure. That'd be great.
Okay. So Michael, if you just put your information into the chat, we'll get back to you.
One of the things I think we've seen today, though, here at Punch too, is that there's organizations out there being formed up, such as Paul's, and that they're not sheds, but they, in fact, are sheds. You know, it's just that they haven't recognized the movement maybe that is out there for them to form a shed, and don't realize, I'm sure you know that there's the $1,000 startup fee is available for a shed. And some might have to change their names if they really want to become a shed.
Okay, Cindy.
Yeah, any last questions before we head into our wrap up? This is your last chance. Or if there's any stories you would like to share. Going once, going twice. Okay, so I'll share my screen and let Karen bring us to the wrap up.
Thanks so much, Cindy. I just want to say before I go into my formal notes, just a big thank you to Cindy and Mei Lee for all of your work to facilitate today and to prepare us for a really well thought out event, but also a big thank you for the leadership of the shedders across Alberta. As I suspected, today was such an inspiring event. And also to community members and community organizations that are supporting the work of shedders. I think there are many examples that we heard about today. So it really, I think, is emblematic of the Menshed movement, that it takes a community to make this kind of thing happen. So I think we heard a lot of really powerful examples of that today. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. This event was hosted through the Social Connections, Wellness, and Mental Health Group on CORE Alberta. CORE Alberta is like a virtual hub, and there's, I think, 17 groups on CORE. So this is hosted through one of those groups. We are currently looking for new group leads for CORE. They play a fundamental role in coordinating provincial learning opportunities like this and can be considered communities of practice united by a common issue. If you're interested in learning more about the role or becoming a new group lead for the Social Connection, Wellness, and Mental Health Group on CORE, please send an email to healthyaging@calgaryunitedway.org. I think Cindy just put that in the chat box. It's a great way to stay connected and meet new people and get involved. So I really encourage you, as you have today, to take a leap and maybe take on that role. We appreciate everyone's valuable contributions today and would love to invite you to fill out our events survey. That's how we learn more about how to deliver these events in a way that works for everyone. This will help us understand what you enjoyed about the event and how we can improve in the future. You can find the link in the chat box. We will send an email also to everyone who is registered, providing a link to today's recording, the resources shared, and the contact information for our guest speakers. If you have not already done so, please do check out Core Alberta at corealberta.ca and create a free membership to stay in the loop of the latest sector news and events. Thank you again for being here today and gifting us with your time, and we hope to connect with you again soon. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
If the
everyone.
guest speakers could stay on, that would be great.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.